Okay, pet parents, if your dog guards something, that sock they stole from the hamper, the couch, your partner, a literal pecan that fell from your pecan tree in the backyard, you already know it's not just a phase. You've tried all the techniques the internet recommends for food and high value item guarding, because that's probably all you could find. The trade up games, the hand feeding, maybe it helped a little. Or maybe your dog just found a new thing to guard. Or just swallows the sock because it's way easier to guard stuff when it's in your stomach. You already know that we work with pet parents on this stuff every day through our private consulting services. But here's the plot twist: Emily doesn't take clients, like ever. She's doing things like hosting this podcast and mentoring other professionals and speaking at conferences and being a general BAMF. But for 6 weeks, starting August 26th, she's opening a very limited number of working spots in a live group course built for resource guarding that goes beyond the food bowl. Things like space, people, things, and situations that I couldn't even make up if I tried. Looking at you, dog who guarded a knife stolen from the kitchen sink. We're talking dogs who used to guard their humans from each other, now sleeping in the family bed. Dogs who turned their own backyard into a pecan minefield, now letting their people just walk around like normal. We're talking about that kind of transformation with this course. Working spots come with a personalized plan built with Emily for your dog's actual case. And there are not many of those spots. So go to petharmonytraining.com/RG for resource guarding before they're gone. Oh, and we do have auditor spots if you want to be a fly on this particular wall. Head to petharmonytraining.com/RG to join either spot. See you there.
Staying in this field and doing it thoughtfully and ethically is genuinely hard. And the fact that you're asking these questions, you are clocking that you might have some concerns about your longevity here is impressive and is no small feat, because acknowledging that you are hurting is hard. And if you're worried about burnout, you should take that seriously, because everybody has choice, control, and agency. They are grown adults and they should make the decisions that are right for them. But I am so sad to see so many really good colleagues have to leave this field.
Welcome to Enrichment for the Real World, the podcast devoted to improving the quality of life of pets and their people through enrichment. We are your hosts, Allie Bender.
And I'm Emily Strong.
And we are here to challenge and expand your view of what enrichment is, what enrichment can be, and what enrichment can do for you and the animals in your lives. Let's get started. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Enrichment for the Real World. And I want to thank you for rating, reviewing, and subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts.
Nobody gets into this field because they want an easy career. I think there are people who think that dog training is going to be an easy career, and they jump in and then immediately jump back out again. So nobody who's been in the career for more than a hot second got into it because they want an easy career. You got into it because you care deeply, to a point of being inconvenient, about animals and ideally also the people who love them. And that same caring is exactly what makes this field so hard to sustain. So today we're going to talk about 5 specific things that we see burnout pet professionals, not as a list of things you're doing wrong, but as a map of what's actually happening to you and why it's happening. And this isn't a comprehensive list, because that would just be an entire podcast unto itself, not just an episode. We could just have a podcast on what burns out animal welfare folks. But it's going to be like top 5 greatest hits. Let's call it that. And here's the thing. Good people are leaving this field, not because they aren't talented or committed, but because the structural and psychological weight of this work is rarely named honestly, like the full ugly truth, and it's almost never addressed directly. I think our field is getting to a point where it's more common to talk about burnout and compassion fatigue and all of those things, and I think that's great, and it's definitely a step in the right direction. And also that's just one piece of it. That's not looking at the whole picture. So by the end of this episode, you'll be able to recognize which of these top 5 greatest hits patterns are showing up in your own work, and you'll have a clearer sense of what support actually looks like. Ellen, I know you deal with burnout.
I think everybody. I don't want to hear from you if you don't. I appreciate that privilege for you and congratulations. And also, your opinion is not welcome here. But I think it's normal. And also, there's like little b burnout and then there's big B burnout, and exhaustion is a current state that many of us are going to experience just as humans, regardless of what our profession is. But I know as a pet professional, we're often asked to handle a huge amount of emotional complexity with difficult cases and grieving families, and quite literally life and death decisions. And most people are trying to do this isolated. And I don't remember where I saw this. It was very cute. They said, yes, humans are primates and also we're bumblebees. Like, we are so social. We need to be around other people. Even if people are exhausting, even if people are tiring, we do need other humans to have the full human experience. And on top of all of that, there's the question of whether or not there is adequate compensation and how are we going to get better in a field where it is the wild west out here.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the reason that I didn't call you out, I called you in. The reason I called you in about burnout is not because you are more burned out than other people in this field, but because you are so good at being aware of how you're experiencing this and being able to articulate it to us, to the team. And so I knew that you would be great at saying, yes, I experience burnout, and also it's normal. It's not, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing unique about me. I mean, we're all unique, but you know what I mean? In this context, a lot of people experience it. And I think one of the differences between you and, sorry, let me try that again without sounding like an ogre. One of the differences between you and a lot of other pet professionals is exactly your level of self awareness. Because a lot of times burnout goes unnamed in this field and people don't recognize that's what's happening to them. And so they either just try to keep pushing through until they break, or they quietly disengage while still showing up. Like, that's my thing, is like, if I'm really burned out, I'll keep showing up and trying to do stuff, but I'm just checked out, and that's not good for anybody. Or a lot of people just leave the profession entirely. And all three of those outcomes are bad for animals, for the families who live with animals, and for our field. We can't afford to lose good people precisely because it's the Wild West and there are so many people in this field who are charging people money without the knowledge that they need to support clients and pets well. And that's not a judgment on them. Again, it's the Wild West. There's not really a standard for what good looks like. And so we can't afford to lose the people who are already doing good work, because the more people we lose doing good work, the fewer models that people who don't yet know enough to do it well have in the field to watch and to learn from. So it's a loss. It's a real loss. And the way this field is structured, professionals are set up to internalize systemic failures as personal inadequacy. And I think that's part of the issue, is that the burnout happens not just because of the difficulties that already exist in the field, but that we're all kind of taught to blame ourselves for those difficulties. And so, like, when a case goes badly, or a client doesn't follow through, or a protocol that you try as a professional doesn't work the way it has for you in the past, the default assumption is, I must have done something wrong, rather than, this is a hard problem in a hard field. All of this is difficult and complex. There may be more to learn. There may be stuff that lies outside of our control. There may be some kind of communication disconnect between the humans. And I will tell you that, like, some of the cases that were the most devastating to me and that I had to do a lot of work to recover from was that third category, where I recognized that I was not the behavior professional for this person because we were just not communicating. Our communication styles just did not mesh. And no matter how hard I tried to connect and make things right, we could not gel. And I ended up referring to colleagues who I trusted, and they were able to succeed with those clients. And the amount of internalized guilt that I had to process over that was wild. Instead of just recognizing that we can't be all things for all people, nobody is everybody's cup of tea. And sometimes that is a good reason to have a strong referral network and to work in collaboration with your colleagues instead of in conflict, because you're not going to click with every client you meet. So, like that, and like nobody talks about that. Like, we talk about compassion fatigue way more than we talk about being able to recognize when it's like a personality mismatch. You know what I mean?
And because so many people do this in isolation, I got big B burnout. I got big B burnout many years ago, and it takes years to get out of that. And I'm very privileged that at this point, I think I am out. I'm fairly certain I'm out of big B burnout, which is why I have the self-reflection to be able to be like, we're not doing that again. And it's going to happen if we keep going the way we're going. I didn't want to do this alone. I was tired of trying to do things alone. I work well on a team where everybody gets to be autonomous individuals and be really stellar at what they're good at. That is where I thrive. So I joined a team and I got to be in dog training classes where I got to get a lot of data. I had a mentee who has a lot of social anxiety, also has some other stuff, very much like my own stuff, which is why I was like, I think I know how to hack your brain to make this work for you. And so for my mentee who was having a hard time, they were like, I don't feel confident. I was like, think of this like you are a biologist. You are going into dog training class, not to teach dog training class or to assist in dog training class. You are going into dog training class to just observe this creature in this environment and what happens when we do little ecological changes. And that changed everything for her because I remember walking into class. It was before my class was going to start, and I knew a bunch of the clients in the room, and I knew how they responded to me, and I knew what I was capable of getting them to do. And then I watched two other instructors interacting, and I got to see how differently they interacted, and I got to see how differently the results were for these individuals. And I was like, oh, it's not about me. There's so much about this that isn't about me, but when we're socialized so individualistic, we tend to put ourselves in the center of everything, and it's exhausting. And I think when people don't intentionally go out to find other people and see other situations and be an active observer and see, like, what is it that Emily does differently than Allie, and what does Allie do differently than Ellen, and what does Ellen do differently than Ellen in this situation and that situation, and what does Ellen do differently than Emily, and what do they do the same, and why did they make the decision to do these things the same way? That's where we find this, like, oh, it's me that's the problem, not that I haven't developed cues, not that I haven't developed behavioral diversity, not that I haven't developed strategies, not that I haven't been a creature of my own consequences. It's me, I'm the problem.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point, that isolation contributes to this. And what I find interesting is that isolation is sort of like I started to say self-sustaining, but it's not even sustaining. It's like it creates a positive feedback loop of like, you're isolated and then you're afraid that other people will see you not be perfect. So you get even more sort of like resource guardy over your clients and what you do, which makes you feel more isolated, which makes you feel more ashamed to show other professionals who you are and what you do. And that cycle just really makes things so much harder. And one of the things I love in Pet Pro is seeing how many people start off with that sort of like mentality and that fear. And it's just such a joy to watch over time for people to like let go of that and sort of gradually start allowing themselves to be a part of a community and allowing themselves to be vulnerable and to share in other people's vulnerabilities. And everybody realizes that their experience is totally normal and like they're not monsters, and like everybody's has the same general struggle buses, right? So I think that is a really big part of it. But let's talk about our top 5 things that that burn people out. So, number one, no client boundaries. Not just saying no, which, okay, we talked earlier, like in another episode, about how this podcast is basically just our confessional. So, like, this top 5 is directly attacking past me and to a lesser extent present me.
I mean, there's a reason that I don't even know if it's the words unofficial. I think it's official at this point. We just haven't put it on the logo that Pet Pro's motto is "We effed up so you don't have to," because these are lessons we learned from effing up. And now hopefully you don't have to, dear listener.
Exactly. Exactly. So all of these things, me, either past me or present me or both. So I'm not throwing stones at glass houses here, friends. We're all in this together.
I already broke my glass house.
Yeah, I broke my glass house years ago. My glass house is just in ruins around me now.
It might be sand.
It's so old that like vines are growing over it and it looks like an archaeological site. Like people are like, once upon a time, somebody had a glass house here. So back on track. So it's not just about saying no, which I struggled hard with saying no, but it's also not having an internal framework or external support to know where the line is and why it matters. And friends, I can't tell you how important that is because I used to get so ragey that clients would dare to do things like call me, or that they would ask me to, they would like book my latest slot at night. And it took me an embarrassing number of years to realize if you don't want to talk on the phone to clients, don't give that as an option. If you don't want to have a 7:30 consulting spot, don't offer that as an option. Like if it makes you mad, you control that. You can change that. And I'm embarrassed by how long, because friends, I've known that I have an auditory processing disorder since college. I was diagnosed in college. Why did it take me 15 plus years after that diagnosis to go, I shouldn't try to support people on the phone because auditory processing disorder? Like, why did that take so long? But it did. It took me that long to realize that you have to know what your boundaries are in order to set and keep them. And then you have to set and keep them to support yourself through your career.
And I think there are a couple of light bulbs I have seen in Pet Pro time and time again. The first one is this idea to have a boundary and to keep a boundary is an active thing that you have to do. So it's not enough to create antecedents where the behavior you want is likely to happen and the behavior you don't want is very unlikely to happen. It doesn't count unless you are saying like, yeah, that's open, but no, you can't have it. And what we've helped people in Pet Pro so much to do is to put in systems that are going to set those boundaries and keep them for you. So instead of a client saying, hey, do you have anything later? You just have an automated scheduler that's like, this is what's available. The end. This is what it is. Because then it's not about you doing the hard thing over and over and then comparing yourself to the people who can do it or do it, even though it's not that they can do it, it's that it actually thrives. That is what they thrive in versus you. I see clients at 7:30 in the morning and Emily would rather die. But I get emails from Emily at 9 o'clock at night and I'm asleep. So
it's true. It's true. Like we have different schedules. And another thing that I will say that was a learning journey for me was the first several years of us working together, the three of us, I felt guilty that I wasn't working on the same schedule as Allie and Ellen. Like my brain, and because of my learning history, interpreted that as I'm a slacker. I'm the slacker of the group, right? And it took me a long time to realize, like, no, this is a privilege that I operate in a business where I can build the schedule that works for my brain and my body. It's not a defect, but I have been my entire life been told that like you should wake up early and start early and work 9 to 5 if you want to be a good productive human. And if you are on a schedule other than that, you're lazy, right? And it took an embarrassing amount of time for me to unpack that within our incredibly safe space of pet art. So like we definitely drag our pasts into our presence with us, and it can impact us far after the event that made us feel that way. And we're not therapists, we're not here to therapize, but like that is my personal experience with setting boundaries. Even after I had set the boundaries, it still took years for me to feel okay with my own boundaries, to feel like they are a good thing, not a problem.
I'll also say I don't think I don't feel good every time I have to tell somebody no or not accommodate a request in some way, shape, or form. I don't feel good. The outcome of this is not intending to feel good for me. The outcome of this is showing up for the people who I am invested in a way that I feel good about. So saying yes to a client at 5 o'clock means that I am hurting my partner and my dogs because we're not getting the time that is family time. Do I feel good telling the client? No, I'm not like, yes, I did it. No, I'm still feeling icky about it. And just because we feel icky doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do.
Right. I mean, I think there's like learning how to differentiate between something that makes you uncomfortable versus something that actually compromises your welfare and well-being. Those are hard things to separate out. And sometimes doing the thing that is good for your welfare and well-being is uncomfortable, but it's a little bit of temporary discomfort now so that you can have long-term wellness. I mean, that word has been so wellness has become a terrible word for me. Like I have a terrible association with that word, but well-being, right? A little bit of discomfort now so that you can have long-term well-being is worth it. It's important. All right. So number 2, there's no safe space for hard conversations. The isolation of processing difficult cases and topics alone. I mean, like, friends, as a community, we need to stop shaming people or shutting people down when they try to have a hard conversation. Like, it is so isolating if you're like, I have this thing that is causing me pain and I want to talk about it with my community. And the community's like, nope, you can't talk about that. Or if you do talk about it, they're like, why are you feeling that way? I've never felt that way. I don't know what you're talking about. It's never been me. Like, whoa, friends, why are we doing this to each other? The cost of having nowhere to go to debrief, to ask questions, to be honest about uncertainty, to be vulnerable about the things that we have identified as being barriers for ourselves. I don't understand why our profession is so opposed to, and I don't think it's just our profession. I think that there's a lot of spaces where that's true. And I think there are a lot of cultures where that's worse than other cultures. But what is happening?
So, to belabor the point, in Pet Pro recently, I just wrapped up a case shadowing group where I release my cases into the wild and we go through session by session. We prep for them like we are just meeting the client, and we watch the initial consultation and we have a discussion about it. What would I do differently? What did I do well? What would I take into the future? All of these things. And the last one I just did was a really hard consultation. Like one of the, if not the hardest consultation of my entire career, or at least the case. The initial consultation wasn't that challenging. And one of the participants said, I actually had to start and stop this so many times because I was getting so uncomfortable with it. And they pulled in their emotional support, Becky, and they sat in a co-working space and were able to finish the recording because we all love our emotional support, Becky. But part of building that safe space is actually also getting safe exposure to the things. So these people were able to watch a very uncomfortable, very hard, very conflict ridden session. And it was not their conflict. It was not their client. They got to see it back to that observation point. They got to see it in the safety of their home with the safety of their emotional support systems that they might have. And then we were able to talk about it in a way that I am also able to have unconditional positive regard for this client. Was it hard? Yes. The whole thing was challenging. And they got to see it demonstrated to be able to have hard things happen and still it not lead to rage or grief or despair or all of these things that are incredibly uncomfortable.
I think that is so important because a lot of people, the reason it's hard for them to watch those cases, it's because they've had similar cases and it's sort of bringing up stuff. That's not always true, but a lot of times I feel like that is a part of it. And and you're right, it's shame, rage, grief, all of those things happen, all of those feelings happen as a result of those cases. And then having to talk about it or work through it, even if it's not your exact case, but one similar to it, is a really hard process. And imagine trying to do that alone. People just won't do it. They won't do that work. Whereas when you have a space where it's safe to do that work, and you have an emotional support human, and you have a crisis kit and you know how to self-regulate, and your community supports you doing all of those things, you actually come out of the other side of that hard, painful exercise better. Better because it's normalized, better because you process all the things that you've been not processing, better because you know what to do in a similar situation in the future. I just, yeah, it's so beautiful that you offer that for Pet Pro. And thank you, Ellen, for being you.
A trend I have seen with people who are really just starting to see private clients, and it's one that I felt and one that I clocked for myself, is you said it might bring up situations or experiences with past clients. And I know so many consultants and trainers who have never had an encounter like that. And their fear comes entirely from seeing hurt behavior professionals lashing out about a client experience publicly online somewhere. And when we don't have somewhere to put that, that is safe, that is private, that is with someone who can maybe take a little bit of that and then shut it off for us, we are hurting other people in the periphery. We are transmitting concerns and worries that don't need to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. That is true. That's such a good point. And I think kind of related to that is that people are afraid, like cases like that can also be the monsters in people's heads of like they're afraid to take on certain types of cases because they're afraid of the worst case scenario. And so the third sort of value of doing that exercise is letting people see, like, it is kind of graduated exposure to their worst fears, and seeing like there's still a way to navigate through it. There's still a way to recover from it. You can equip yourselves for how to handle those situations, which makes them less scary. So we've really got kind of three layers of why having that safe space for hard conversations is so valuable.
Yep. Our third reason is there's not a clear direction for almost anything. And that paralysis of not knowing what the next step in your career is. Do I get a certification? Do I not get a certification? Do I apprentice? How do I apprentice? Do I shadow? Do I not shadow? Do I get mentorship? What's the difference between mentorship and apprenticeship and getting a certification? Which certification? Oh my gosh, what about all of these online courses? What about all of these certificates that aren't even certifications? How do you choose? It's really hard to make a decision. We may not make a decision, or we may by default just consume. And then we have this overloaded brain that is still doing the same thing that wasn't working for us. The reason we went to go get more education is to fix something, but we haven't figured out how to put it into practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote a blog article related to that a while ago that we can include in the show notes about how important it is to, like, well, what learning actually looks like. What are the four components of learning, and how do you take what you've learned and cultivate fluency so that you don't feel like, okay, I absorbed that. It didn't change anything. The answer is absorbing more and just absorbing more and just absorbing more. And also, one of the things that we work on frequently in Pet Pro is helping people put their own professional development through the enrichment framework, and they can build an enrichment focused professional development plan for themselves so that the courses that they are taking, the mentorships that they do go through, the books that they do read are all leading them towards their own goals. And I will say too, we've also had several people in Pet Pro that when my mentees, I have talked to them about this process, they're like, well, what if I'm just not a person who has goals? Like, what if that's not how my brain works and I prefer to just sort of like flit around? I'm like, cool. You still have goals. Like, what is your motivation for flitting around? What are you doing? And then a lot of times it's, I don't know what I want to focus on. So I like to try a little bit of everything. And I'm like, yeah, that's also me. I've also done that. I am a dabbler. And my reason for dabbling is that I didn't know what I wanted my niche to be. And the only way I was able to discover that is by dabbling, is by doing a little bit of everything. So it's not that you don't have a goal, it's that your goal right now is information gathering. But if you know that, if you have the purpose behind dabbling, then you can actually use that to better support yourself in the future instead of just sort of flailing and hoarding CE. And so even the people who are like, I'm not a goal oriented type of person, that's not how my brain works, we were still able to give them structure so that they're able to move towards something that they want for themselves. So it even if you are collecting CE, you can still do that in a way that supports your growth.
For years, I was terrified of doing separation anxiety, terrified. I said flat out to so many people I would not do it. And now it's my preference over many other things. But my goal shifted from being a dog trainer to not being out of the house 16 to 18 hours a day, being exhausted. I wanted to spend more time with my dogs. I wanted to have more flexibility. And then I was able to look at that and say, I want something different for my life now. What would enable me to do that? And then I could reflect and say, separation anxiety would work really well for the life that I want. Why am I afraid of that? Like, genuinely, what about that is scary to me? Because that shows me a skill gap. Not that I can't do it, I just am missing something very particular that I can go figure out. And it was that I didn't want to feel like I had to punish my client. And telling people you can't leave your house feels like a punishment. And that was not in alignment with the way that I wanted to practice. And so I got to be curious and explore that. And here I am.
Yeah, we could have a whole episode on how to handle separation related behaviors through an enrichment lens for the humans too, so that you're not asking humans to have an untenable life for indefinitely, because there's a lot to unpack there. But that is not the topic for this episode.
Pet professionals and everyone else burnout is you're not doing self-care. And I don't mean manicures and pedicures. I mean like genuine self-care, caring for yourself, caring for others, the collective task of taking care of the thing that you reside in and taking care of your nervous system, completing your stress response cycle, having adequate recovery time, treating yourself like a cute little creature in an enclosure that also has needs and deserves behavioral diversity.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm so salty about the fact that the terms self-care and wellness have been hijacked by a privilege industry, because so many people are like, no, self-care is privilege. I don't do that. And it's like, no, self-care is survival, friends. You are correct that self-care and wellness those terms have been poisoned by industries that want to sell you $350 massages. Like, yes, and that's not what we're talking about here. And I think that we've talked many times on the podcast about how many people come into Pet Pro and they're like, yeah, self-care. Either it's not for me, I don't do that because privilege, or I do it fine. I've got this. I know how to do it.
Or I don't need it because I'm going to be the anomaly. I'm not going to burn out because I'm different. This is me, friends. I'm not sassing anybody but myself. That's a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah. I mean, several times throughout my career, I have told people I used to get burned out, but I don't do that anymore. It's like just unpacking layers of like, oh, you sweet child. The arrogance of ignorance is like the theme of my entire learning journey.
God, ignorance is bliss.
It really is.
I didn't understand that as well as I think I understand it now. 5 years from now, I might see it even more clearly, but
I think my whole life I'll be looking on myself from a few years ago and being like, oh, there's another little example of arrogance of ignorance, right? But self-care is really about completing your stress response cycle, and you can't stay in this profession if you experience chronic toxic stress from the profession. So I think that is the thing to remember, that like What we're talking about here is protecting future you from present you's choices. That's really what it's about. That's what self-care is, protecting future you.
Or even protecting future you, present you protecting future you for past you's choices. Because when I have a particularly heavy day, that was a decision I made to see that many clients in a day. And now it's present me's job to do the thing that I committed to and make sure that I'm okay.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And that's so, I mean, I am, again, this whole cast is confessional. I am so much meaner to myself than I have ever been to anybody else. And I I am still learning. I've come a long way and I still have a long way to go to think of future me the way I think of the humans and non-humans in my care. Have to treat future me the way I treat my mentees, the way I treat the animals in my life. And learning how to do that has been and is an ongoing journey of like, would I put my clients or my students or their pets in this kind of situation? No, I wouldn't. So why am I setting the stage to put myself, future self, in this situation?
I think it's fascinating that you're mean to you and I have object permanence issues with myself. I forget that I exist and need to be accounted for. And it's not that I don't think I deserve it. I just genuinely, I live in this body and somehow have object permanence issues with myself.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's true for a lot of caregivers, right? Is that like a lot of caregivers burn themselves out because they forget they exist. They're so focused on everybody else and taking care of everyone that they forget. I There might have been a point in time that was me, but my body has kind of forced me to pay attention to myself. Let me rephrase that because I think that's true for everybody on our team. My body started forcing me to pay attention to myself from a very young age, so it's hard for me to forget that I exist. But I do struggle with being mean to myself.
If self-care ekes you out, if you don't like that, you can think about it as enrichment. I was not, I was, it was flippant, but I was being very serious. If you need to think about you as a little creature in an enclosure that you are responsible for taking care of, the same way you would take care of a crab or your dog or anybody else, sometimes taking that step back and being like, what would a human activity budget look like? What does human need can be really helpful if you forget that you somehow can be in a body and forget it exists.
I mean, that's why I fell in love with the Healthy Mind Platter. The moment that Allie introduced it to us, I was like, it's an enrichment plan for humans. Like, it's just so beautiful. So, yeah, enrich thyself is the take home point. All right, number 5, not believing in yourself. Everybody, I don't know if it's true that everybody, but everybody in the industry that I have interacted with, except like Susan Friedman and Kiki Ablan and maybe a handful of other people, Ken Ramirez, everybody else at some point has said to me that they experience imposter syndrome. Ken said it too. See, there you go.
The point that I was at a Clicker Expo dinner and heard somebody said it was something along the lines of, why don't you experience imposter syndrome? And Ken was like, oh, what makes you think I don't? And I was like, oh, okay. If Ken feels like an imposter, this isn't an actual measure of anything. I could probably put that over there on a shelf, like a little collection that I had.
And I think, that's not, it is not surprising that so many of us experience that because we are steeped in comparison culture. We are steeped in guru culture. And I think our industry is even more susceptible to hero worship than other industries precisely because it's the Wild West and there's not a clear path or clear standards or anything like that. We are so prone to hero worship, and that does us harm. Hero worship does us harm because we create this image of somebody in our head that isn't real. And then we strive to be like that image, which is unrealistic. And then every time we fail to meet that imaginary standard that we've invented in our head about whatever professional in the industry that we look up to, we just beat ourselves up because we're like, I could never be as good as so and so. Or where like I have to just keep following this person because if I listen to them long enough, it might absorb in. And like we become really campy about like, I follow the John Doe method, I follow the Jane Doe method, I follow, and it's like, no, that you're hurting yourself, friends, by having that mentality about what growth looks like, what competence looks like, what your professional journey should look like, what niche you're going to work in, what your schedule looks like. If I tried to compare myself to Ken Ramirez, I would die because that man has capacity. I mean, listen, when I was younger, I had a capacity that a lot of people found astonishing. Everything that I was able to do, a lot of people didn't understand how I could do it. And even then, I did less than Ken Ramirez does now, several decades older than I was at the time. And now in my 40s, my capacity is a fraction of what it was in my 20s and 30s. If I tried to be like Ken Ramirez, I would die because my body and my brain don't support the capacity that Ken's body and brain supports for him. So I'm not trying to be Ken. I'm just trying to be the best Emily I can be.
What am I? Client's turn, mentee turn, client turn, mentee. I don't know the order of events. Had to this exact point signed up for an old course that we used to have that was essentially like topical group behavior consulting. And they joined as an auditor. They thought you were teaching it. It was when I was new to Pet Harmony. And about halfway through, they sent me a message that said, I was really upset when I learned that Emily wasn't the one that was teaching this. And I was like, that's valid. I don't blame you for that. That's okay. I'm not offended by this. But watching you instead of Emily taught me that I don't have to be Emily to be good. I can be me and be good. And I think that is the biggest lesson that I want people to take away. And like, I understand some people have really horrible learning histories, and it may take the rest of your life for you to be able to believe in yourself. But when you surround yourself by people who can lend you their belief and can give you some when you are like, I don't know that I can do this, it is amazing what you can get done when somebody else is like, no, why do you think you can't do this? I think you can do this. So you obviously can do this. And that's why I have managed to accomplish so much in my career, is that people are like, present at this conference. And I'm like, me? I could never. And they're like, yes, you can. And recently that happened to me. And my initial thought was, do I trust the person asking me? And the answer was yes. Do I trust their judgment? The answer was yes. Then why don't I trust their assessment that I can do this? Because they would not put me in a place to fail. And I see people do that in Pet Pro for one another all the time. And that's the part where I like get to dust off my hands and throw them up and say, if I retired today, the kid's going to be all right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about it is there's a hard limit as to how much we can support our mentees sort of behavioral and emotional and mental health because we're not therapists. That's not our job. That's not our role in their lives. And also being in a community where people believe in you and point out your strengths that you yourself don't see can sometimes be as impactful as therapy, because I can't tell you how many mentees have been like, I could never do that. I'm not like that. Or it doesn't even occur to them until I'm like, have you considered doing this thing? And they're like, what? Me? Right? Having somebody outside of yourself show you what you're good at and tell you what you are capable of allows you to not to you don't have to wait until you go on that journey of believing in yourself to get things done. And that's so important. So number 5 is really not believing in yourself and or not having a community who believes in you. All right. So how can you apply this? Which of the 5 is loudest for you right now? Not all 5, just one.
Which one made you think, F you guys?
Which one made you want to lash out at us? Which one made you want to stop listening to this podcast because we're meanies?
Which one made you stop breathing? That's the one you might want to pick. Just gentle recommendation.
Yeah. It's important to cultivate awareness before you do anything about it. And also, if you're struggling with just one, welcome. This is why one-on-one mentorship is built into Pet Pro, because decision fatigue is drowning us all. And sometimes you need somebody else to say, all right, here's what you're going to focus on right now. I don't know how many of my mentees I'm like, this is what we're going to focus on right now. We will do the rest of it later.
Put the shiny down.
Put the shinies down. Yeah. Or even if they're not shinies, even if they are valid parts of your professional development enrichment plan, prioritization is a really important part of the enrichment framework. And we just need to deprioritize these other things because we really need to focus on this one right now. Next, make small shifts. For boundaries, identify one place where you're saying yes when you have no feelings and get curious about what's underneath that. Why are you saying yes?
I don't think you said that right. Identify one place where you're saying yes and you have no feelings is the place.
When you have no feelings. Do you want me to just say it again? Let me just start that over so that it's more clear.
Yeah, because I have no idea what you're saying.
Okay. Identify one place where you're saying yes when deep down inside you really mean no. You've got big no feelings.
When you're having no feelings.
What you heard, and now it makes total sense to me why you were confused, but it took me a minute. It took me you doing your prosody and your hand gestures for me to figure out why it was.
I was like, why would you want them to say yes and have no feelings and change that? That feels like the appropriate thing to leave alone.
Oh, I'm so glad that you asked me to redo that because I didn't hear it until you mirrored it back to me. Thank you for that. All right, let me start that over. Identify one place where you're saying yes when deep down you mean no. You've got big no feelings. And get curious about what's underneath that.
For isolation, find one person that you can be honest with. Might be a friend, might be a family member, might be a colleague, might be somebody else. Not performatively positive. Not like, oh, everything is going great all the time. It's sunshine and rainbows and nothing could ever bother me. Everything just flows right off. But somebody you can genuinely say, no, this kind of sucks. I'm in the dark place. I'll come out of the dark place, but I'm going to be in this tunnel for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, it's so helpful to have somebody whose feedback you trust, that they're going to be honest with you and not either dismiss the struggles that you're experiencing or just glitter wash everything in this like sunshine, rainbows, positivity veneer. It is really meaningful and impactful to have at least one person in your life who can be like, yeah, that's not it, friend. But you know what? That's okay. We all go through that. And here's what you can do differently. Because when you trust them to say that, then when they say, you've got this, you are capable of this, and you should go for it, you trust that as being true because you know they will tell you if that is not the case. They will tell you if you've got more learning to do before you're ready to take the leap. Even just one person in your life like that can make a huge difference. For direction, notice whether your learning is expanding your knowledge or deepening your clarity. And ask which one you actually need right now. Do you need to learn more things, or do you need to let what you already know sink into your bones so that you can gain fluency at it? Which is the goal right now?
For self-care, ask yourself what completing your stress response cycle looks like for your body, your capacity in your life. We just had Dr. Amelia Nagoski on the show a couple of episodes ago, so I will link to that in the show notes because I had Big B burnout, and Doctors Nagoski and Nagoski are the reason I came out of it.
I love them so much. I just had to say that.
Complete gush. They changed my life in ways that I could not even express to them if I tried.
Yeah, they're amazing. For self-trust, notice the next time you second guess a good instinct and ask where that doubt is coming from. Are you picking up on valid concerns that you need to carefully consider and plan around? Or is the voice in your head just being really mean to you based on your learning history? I have a very mean voice in my head. So I get it.
Staying in this field and doing it thoughtfully and ethically is genuinely hard. And the fact that you're asking these questions, you are clocking that you might have some concerns about your longevity here is impressive and is no small feat, because acknowledging that you are hurting is hard. And if you're worried about burnout, you should take that seriously, because everybody has choice, control, and agency. They are grown adults and they should make the decisions that are right for them. But I am so sad to see so many really good colleagues have to leave this field.
I mean, it is a tightrope because on one hand, you have people who are pro bonoing themselves into poverty. Past me is one of those people, and burning themselves out because they're undervaluing their services and they're not setting boundaries. And then on the other hand, you have a contingent who are charging whatever to do what they do without questioning whether what they're doing is best practices, whether what they're doing is actually supporting the learners in their care, whether they are adequately qualified to be taking on certain cases, and raking in a lot of money. And it is really hard. It is a tightrope. The balance to not fall into either one of those is very difficult. It's legitimately tricky. So cut yourself some slack, because walking a tightrope is hard, but also let's build up our core muscles so that we can walk that tightrope and be ethical and also pay ourselves, but making sure that we're getting paid for really good, solid, competent, ethical work.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if there's someone in your life who also needs to hear this, be sure to text it to them right now. If you're a pet parent looking for more tips on enrichment, behavior modification, and finding harmony with your pet, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Pet Harmony Training. If you're a behavior training professional dedicated to enrichment for yourself, your clients, and their pets, check us out on TikTok and Instagram at Pet Harmony Pro. As always, links to everything we discussed in this episode are in the show notes. Thank you to Ellen Yoakum for editing this episode and making us sound good. Our intro music is from Penguin Music on Pixabay. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That helps more pet lovers and professionals find us so they can bring enrichment into their world too. Thank you for listening, and here's to harmony.
There may be some kind of communication disconnect between the behavior professionals are humans, between the behavior professional and the client. I started to say between the human and the behavior professional. That's not what I meant. Between the humans